Twisted Minds begin by pushing the cart up to the corner through main. This cart push is free, so when you're playing Shimbali attack, once the cart gets to where it needs to be, Twisted Minds rotate through the side room to make their first TP, that being to the Mega Room to flip the map on T1. A map flip is where you essentially flip who's playing on the defending or attacking sides of the map. If you look at this moment here, after the TP, it almost looks like Twisted Minds are in the defender's position, while T1 are the attackers. Flipping map can be incredibly powerful in terms of creating more advantageous fights, since most maps are designed in a way where the defender's position on the map is stronger by default. Jasmine's Ramattra on the side of T1 is able to get 2 kills off before getting chunked down and dying to Youbi's Symmetra. The trades aren't in favor of Twisted, and you could say that they technically. That's because T1 must concede their position and allow Twisted to push the cart to the next corner here, probably because I made the bold claim that Symmetra is the strongest DPS hero in the game. Now, to be fair, I do think the absolute strongest will shift depending on the meta, but Symmetra has always been strong, and you can almost always force her. But what makes her strong? Well, the primary factor is her most important cooldown, her teleporter, which we often call TP. TP is one of the strongest cooldowns in the entirety of Overwatch. It is stronger than Suzu, Nade, Fortify, and honestly, most cooldowns in the game. It's an ability on a 12-second cooldown that throws down utility that lasts for 10 seconds unless destroyed. So TP can have insane uptime, which can be relevant with certain kinds of TPs. Now, there are 4 fundamental kinds of TPs that you can do on Symmetra. So what was that TP we just saw in the first fight? That was a rotation TP, the first and simplest kind of TP. Youbi throws down the teleporter to make a rotation to flip the map on T1. Rotation TPs are easy to recognize because they usually happen in the poke phase of the fight before anything significant has actually happened, and usually almost the entire team will take the TP to go on the rotation. This kind of teleporter isn't meant to directly attack the opponent, rather it is meant to set yourself up to take a better fight in the future. The next fight will introduce us to yet another kind of TP. This time, it is the attack TP. Attacking TPs are pretty simple. They're used to directly engage in a fight over a space. There are many ways in which this is done, but in Twisted's case here, we actually see a bit of an interesting attack TP. It actually looks much like a rotation TP, but the difference is that it's just directly into the enemy team. A hero that usually wouldn't have too much mobility can now most literally teleport straight on top of the opposing hit scan. Third kind of TP comes into play, the defensive TP. Youbi throws down a TP in order to completely escape the grasp of the Kitsune from T1. In this case, it's a little funny because Youbi was the only one who actually needed to take this TP, but either way, it ensured that Youbi himself lived, and there are cases where defensive TPs like this one are used by more than one player to kite an ultimate and disengage. Defensive TPs are just teleporters used with the goal of kiting and escaping the enemy team, or an ability that the enemy team used. Fun fact, you can even use it to escape ultimates like Zarya Grav, so TP is often saved for situations to escape and kite away to keep everyone alive for a potential re-engage. That re-engage does come through for Twisted Minds in the form of Simple's Kitsune. T1 attempt to fight into it with Jasmine using Annihilation to try and cut off the backline of Twisted, but he wasn't successful and got fried while TVNT's D.Va contests the cart. Quartz kills not only Jasmine, but Vigilante and Proud too, and with that, Twisted managed to cap in overtime.
Quartz takes out the tank and TVNT getting lit for the resuit. Not quite with Zest on the case, but the beat is good, and then the overtime spawns. This one is done. Twisted Minds gonna full cap on Shimbali Monastery, a feat we've rarely seen so far this tournament.
T1 decide to switch things up, playing even more heavily into their Venture counter strategy. They do this by moving Jasmine from Ramattra over to Zarya. Now, you might see the Zarya as a counter to TVNT's D.Va pick as well, and while this is partially true, it can be argued that Twisted Mind's full composition actually counters the Zarya more than the Zarya counters them. Take a look at this. T1 begin their attack with what we talked about before, having to push the cart to the corner before making any moves. When Jasmine's Zarya pushes up enough, Twisted make the call and hit the gas. Rather than teleporting, they just walk right at T1, running at the Zarya and focusing all their resources into blowing her up. And, well, Jasmine just dies. The Zarya is just dead. Sure, of course, the Sojourn was lost near the end of this fight, but Twisted essentially instantaneously won it. You see, Zarya's primary weakness is getting run over, something that Twisted's Brawl composition is, well, very good at doing. The Zarya wants a long, drawn-out fight in order to build charge, while Twisted can just up the tempo at any time and run down the Zarya before she has a chance to breathe. And Zarya doesn't have a real movement ability, making her even more susceptible to this strategy. This is why we don't think about counters in terms of Hero A counters Hero B. Is that simpler? Yeah. Can it sometimes work out? Yeah, sometimes. But does it demonstrate actual understanding of how this game works? No, it just doesn't. So keep that in mind when you're considering how counters work in Overwatch, because it's all about composition and not just individual hero picks. So why are T1 on Zarya if she's more vulnerable in terms of being run over? Well, that's because Zarya is a great enabler for Venture. She can bubble Venture's burrow engages and empowers the Venture to get greedier and go for riskier plays. So basically, T1 are putting all their cards on Zest's Venture, relying on him to carry on the Venture. Oh yeah, and we can't forget about Youbi, because this first fight demonstrates our last fundamental kind of TP that we'll be looking at throughout this match, that being the bait TP. Bait TPs are very simple. When you don't know what to do with your TP, or don't think you'll need it on the walk-up, you can just throw it behind the enemy team to bait them into thinking you're going to teleport there. It is a TP thrown down purely to discombobulate your opponent. You don't take it, your team doesn't take it, but your opponent doesn't know that. Bait TPs are interesting as well because your opponent almost has to look at it a lot of the time. It's just too much of a threat to have teleporters sit alive in the middle of the fight, because although bait TPs aren't meant to be used by your team, if it stays alive throughout the engage, you can end up using it if it's convenient to help you during the fight. Every second the opponent spends shooting the TP and not you is extremely valuable. That's what a bait TP is for. Pretty useful. A lot of the time you'll be picking heroes based on what ultimates they have, just because, at the end of the day, if you have better ults, it's much easier to win fights. Like, for example, Kiriko's Kitsune is just better than Baptiste's Window. That's why the Kiriko Lucio backline is so popular in comparison to Bap Lucio. Bap isn't necessarily bad right now, he's fine. What does that mean for Symmetra? Well, Symmetra has the strongest DPS ultimate in the entire game. Her ultimate is so strong that it's on the level of absurd support ults like Kitsune and Beat. And on top of that, it charges relatively quickly. It's essentially a strong support ultimate on a DPS hero, which by the way is ridiculous for your team's potential in ult fights. Simwall is just really, really good. In effect, Twisted Minds have 3 support ultimates, while T1 only have 2. So Twisted will always have a certain amount of an advantage in terms of ult rotation by default. There are caveats to Simwall though, such as the fact that it isn't as strong against dive compositions, but honestly, that isn't really relevant here, so Twisted just don't have to worry about it. Dive isn't good on this map in most situations, and dive is weaker in this meta overall, so it's not like T1 can just swap over as much as they probably like to considering they're a Korean team.